So archaeology and history of Cymru. Today, we're going to be looking at the monastery side of things. Now, I thought that one of the issues to do with monasteries in our wonderful land is being specific to which denomination these monasteries belong to. But going beyond that, it's the issue of the native church, the pre-Norman church, that really interests me. Very recently, I went up to the top of the hill here, Penrhys Hill, Mynachdy Rhys, which is the monastery of King Rhys. Now, anyone that's seen my video associated with Penrhys, a place known as Beddau, and Beddau is a place that there was a battle between King Rhys and Iestyn ap Gorgon over who ruled over Glamorgan. Now, Iestyn ap Gorgon had support from the Normans, and King Rhys didn't. Anyway, the point is, we've got a monastery named after King Rhys up there. And the other point, the key point is, it was the native church. It was the pre-Norman church that I'm more interested in tonight. But there is one example of a non-pre-Norman church that we'll look at. And there's bits of this lecture tonight that will interest everybody. And this is the way I've deliberately played into this. So I'm not really sure, Bill, you can make much of a contribution tonight, but if there's anything I will ask you, I will ask you as we go along. So the first place we're going to look at, as you can see on the map, is Llanbadarn Fawr. Now, Llanbadarn Fawr is an interesting location. It kicks the ball off into the opposition. And the one thing I would like to say in opening is that when you get strange saints' names, like Saint Pattern, and you've got names of Saint Paternus, odd names, it's likely that you're into a locality that might have pre-Norman origins. Saint Pattern or Saint Paternus, this is a Greek Orthodox image of what he looked like, an icon of what he looked like. And Llanbadarn Fawr Priory is a site that may have been established at the early stages of Christianity in our land. And very much, when we think about our land of Cymru, we can drag in Cornwall there. I don't just mention Cornwall because Pete's with us. I mention Cornwall because when you go to Cornwall, there's a different air about the early Christianity there. In Cornwall, you've got lots of roadside crosses, and you've got loads of pilgrims' ways, and you get that within our land as well, within our land of Cymru. So that's where the link is. We've got an unusual form of Christianity, and it's an unusual form of Christianity because the Anglo-Saxons didn't get here. The Anglo-Saxons really didn't get into Cornwall either. And what you see is the native church surviving. And it's only when the Normans come over that we do see those new religious orders, like the Franciscans, like the Savanac monks. And then we look at the Dominicans, the Benedictines, the Cistercians, the Carmelites, and you've got all these weird sounding French Norman orders coming over here. And I've wondered this for many years, but more so that I'm living where I'm living. And I think of Mynachdy Rhys, I think of the Monastery of Rhys, and I think, what religious order was there before? Who were these religious people? And maybe the answer comes with this site, at Llanbadarn Fawr. And as you look through the references to Llanbadarn Fawr, I've got a list of monastic houses that we see across the whole of our wonderful land, and it's quite a long list actually. And if I just look at one side of this list, so let's sort of go to, here we go. Let's go to the list of monasteries. I won't do them all. The list of monasteries in Ceredigion. Cardigan Priory. Cardigan Priory, established by the Benedictine monks sometime around 1110. But Llanbadarn Fawr was established in the 500s, 500, 600 years before the Normans. And then you see monks, and the Llanbadarn Fawr Priory was destroyed before 1100 by the Normans, by King William II, and then by Henry's men. And then Llanbadarn Fawr has a movement of religion. And the movement of religion are those monks that we've been mentioning, those Benedictine monks. And we go through the list. Llandewi Brefi, near St. Llandewi Brefi, that's associated with St. David's. Now, the one at Llandewi Brefi goes back to the 500s. So whatever religious order was there before, we don't know. But a religious house was established there. There's another one called Llanllir Priory, which is also, all of these are in West Wales. It's not really relevant where they are, but that's Cistercian. Strata Flora Abbey. So I know some of you have been there, near Whitland, Carmarthenshire, near Carmarthen. That's Cistercian. And then you've got another one near there, that's Cistercian, near Whitland. And you've got a Spiti, a Spith, and that's also in West Wales. That's got Cistercian monks. So out of this entire list, other than the one associated with St. David's, Llanbadarn Fawr stands out. And you start to think, well, that's rather interesting. That's really interesting because there was a religious order of non-Norman monks there beforehand. And what happened to them? And my gut feeling is that they were all kicked out. You know, it's basically, we've got Franciscans coming over, and there was a religious house, and these are monks that thought differently from the Franciscans or the Cistercians. You know, they thought so differently. It's almost as if like you're moving Christians out and you're moving Muslims in. It's almost a completely different faith. Our form of Christianity is very different from the Norman form of Christianity. And this is what really interests me about this whole area. So there we go, Llanbadarn Fawr. There's the church. And with lots of these sites, what you do find is lots of the land back in the day was associated with the church, particularly in that location. Usually after, and I've been reading a little bit about this, when you find these native orders of monks, when the Normans come over, they either convert the building into a Cistercian monastery or priory or whatever you've got, or it just transfers into a parochial parish church. This is what we can sort of see. And there's a strange anomaly here as well, is that the power of the church is so much that the princes of Cymru give way to the Norman orders. And you would think surely the religious orders of our land would keep on to our monks. But in lots of cases, they don't. They give way to the power of the church. And I'm not going to read any more into that, but I think that's a really good piece of food for thought. So again, Llanbadarn, looking at this building, and I'm going to make a couple of one or two parallels within the Vale of Glamorgan, actually. I don't know if any of you have been to the likes of Lisworney and the likes of Carl Winston and the likes of Llanmaes with me. And usually I'm pointing out earlier stuff. I'm usually saying, well, that doesn't fit. Yeah, that's pre-Norman. Oh, that's very much earlier than what we think. And I do say that. And I can't give you any answers who these pre-Norman religious orders were, which is a bit of a shame. Michelle's very much, she can get, you'll be quite surprised, she may be quiet, but when she gets on this high horse, what happened to our early history, she gets really annoyed. And sometimes I find little bits of inspiration from what she's saying. So you're all aware that I will be continuing this course for another 8 weeks. And I will carry on the theme that we've been looking at. And there's so much that we still haven't done. And looking at this church as well. And I think Bill, Llangynoedd Church is not a small church, is it? And you think about Llangynoedd and you think about this Llanbadarn Fawr, and you think they're very large churches. So they must have been something bigger back in the day. Whether they're pre-Norman churches or whether they're Norman churches and are then fallen foul of the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1530s, 1540s. And then you see this big church and you think, well, it can't have just been a church. And we see that at Coed Church as well in the Vale of Glamorgan. And one sign of early Christianity, if we're looking for it, is actually the carvings. Now, I didn't do this when we looked at carvings in church graveyards. This is Llanbadarn Fawr. This is a wonderful column, a wonderful pillar. There you go. And you can see that is really fine and it's really beautiful. And I was in a bit of a rush to try and get things done today. It doesn't seem it, but I wish I would found out if that's still there. I don't think it's going to be in the church graveyard anymore. If it is, it's going to be really badly eroded. So this is an image from about 1910. And again, looking at signs of early Christianity, look towards what you find at Llantwit Major. You all know what I feel about the church, and other experts have started to come out with it. The church at Llantwit Major is a last no more than from about the 1200s. But we've got stones at Llantwit Major from a much earlier period. Those stones are very finely carved. And who put up the money to carve these stones? Before the Normans. Again, indicative of lots of the stories that we see associated with Ilkdid and Llantwit Major. So the next one we're going to look at is this one you hear, Abbey Come Here. Have you ever been to Abbey Come Here, Bill?
No, I haven't.
It's a very strange sight. It's a very strange one. Abbey Come Here is in the heart of our land. And it's a strange one because it's founded by the Normans with a grimace. But the links with Abbey Come Here are purely our land, Bill. So let's see where Abbey Come Here is. And there's a man who I've got a lot of respect for, Dr. John Davis. Not that John Davis, Bill, another John Davis.
Dr. John, who passed away, yeah?
He's a geologist. He's another guy. Because you've got the one, You got the one John Davis has passed away, and this is the other John Davis. And this John Davis was very passionate about Abbey Cymru, and I do believe, I hope he's still alive, he's very passionate about it. And there's a couple of points I'd like to make about this aerial view, but let's show you where it is. There's Abbey Cymru, Ellen, before you interrupt. In the heart of Wales, north of Llandrindod Wells. Llanbydden-Fanydd is the place that you should head towards, and then you'll see signposts for Abbey Cymru. 2 points to be made. Quite important point, really. When you think about the size of this religious house, so that's basically where the towers would have been. It stretches all the way over here. And you think actually in the surroundings, there's quite a small village. And when you look at this, you think, well, right, this must have been the center of something really important once. And it's in the center of something really important in our mindset. So let's shoot from the hip, if I may. Abbey Cymru. Now, Abbey Cymru. Abbey Cymru. Near Llandrindod Wells. It's classed as a Welsh Cistercian monastery, founded in 1176, not by a Norman, but by Cadwallon ap Madog. Cadwallon ap Madog was a native lord of that landscape. And he apparently founded it sometime around 1176. And he was later killed by Sir Roger Mortimer of Wigmore on the 22nd of September, 1179. But there's another point to be made, that lots of the lords of our land were very, very, very wealthy. And like the Normans, putting their excess money into these monasteries is a sign of their wealth. Now, I may have exaggerated the very wealthy. They weren't as wealthy as the Normans, but you're wealthy when you've got excess money. Okay, Bill, can I have 100 grand? That's because you got 2 million in the bank, right? This is the way this works. When you've got excess money, you're going to use it for buildings, and that's the point. So Abbey Cymru is being constructed. And why is it so important in our mindset? Why is it so important to Dr. John Davis? And the reason why it's so important to Dr. John Davis is because a certain individual's head is buried at this site. What we do see is, even though the Normans are bidding for control over the landscape, by 1215, Prince Llewellyn ap Iorwerth of Gwynedd has extended his control to Powys, Llewellyn the Great of Gwynedd. And with that, more money went into the site of Abbey Cymru. And there's a few interesting points. The point is, the head of Llewellyn the Last's is buried at this locality. The head, because he was beheaded. Some say it's the headless body of Llewellyn ap Gruffydd that's buried here. But because his remains were hung, drawn and quartered, it's probably very difficult to work out which part of the body was actually buried here. But there's that link with the last Prince of Wales. There's that pure sadness that we see the end of our independence at this site, with the burial of some of the remains of Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, Llywelyn the Last of Cymru sometime in December 1282, after he was killed at Kilmary in 11th of December 1282. It's very possible that after this site had sort of fallen into Norman hands, the site was very badly damaged within the rebellion of Owain Glyndŵr in 1401, but it remained a monastic site. So we've got mixed blessings with the site. We've got the body, or headless body, or the head buried here. I've seen one source saying that his head's buried here, and the other source saying his body's buried here. So I'm a bit confused which is which. But some of the remains of Llywelyn's actually buried here. And this is why this site is so special. And then by 1536, like most of these monastic houses in Cymru, like most of the monastic houses in Cymru, they were closed down, demolished, and the stone taken elsewhere. But that's where there's a memorial to him today, which is great. You can see the memorial. And I'm not exactly sure that underneath that is actually his remains, because it would be a stab in the dark. But this is a memorial to him, which is very, very important. And lots of the fine remains and fine dressed stonework has now been removed and used to build lots of the country houses and the church and so on at Abbey Cymru. But it's nevertheless a very interesting site to visit. Lots of bits of stone standing up. I've heard when Dr. Jonathan Davis was involved in the Abbey Cymru Trust, there was lots of discussion about reconstructing bits of this site due to its importance associated with our princes of old and our kings of old. Where am I going next, Bill? Trick question.
You're going to Llandaff.
Oh, bloody hell. How did you know that?
Well, easy. I'll tell you one day.
Yeah, all right then. You can tell me one day. I moved on to Llandaff, and the reason why I want to move on to Llandaff is because I do actually look at the Vale of Glamorgan a fair bit, and sort of Cardiff and so on in this last part. And I'm just going to spew off a load of names here, right? So, Penrhys Grange. Now, Cistercian monks, dependent on the Llantarnam. So that's a good start. That's near me. Pedar Grange, that's associated with Margam. And then Llantarnam. Neath, Savannah monks, then Cistercian. And then you've got Margam. Now, Margam's an interesting one. Why is it important to me, Bill? Margam, it was founded back in the 500s. So that's pre-Norman. Lots of people wouldn't know that, because lot is made on the Cistercian stuff associated with Margam and the fire in the house and all that gubbins.
It actually did. The official date is 1154, isn't it, I think?
Margam, 1147. So I'll give you that, Bill.
1147, yeah.
You're probably thinking of the one on the hill.
Or the old church.
Yeah. Or is that earlier? Anyway, so we mentioned Llantwit Major. That comes in as a monastery. There's another one at a place I've never heard of, Llangaflach, and that's also a native one. Llanmadog, that's interesting. Knights Templar. Llangenith Priory, Benedictine monks. Llandoch. Now, we mentioned Llandoch a few weeks ago, and we mentioned about that, what the Urbic cross. I think we did that last week, didn't we? Or was it the week before? We did the Urbic cross, and I mentioned pre-Norman there. So that's another one. Llandaff, that is associated with Saint Dubricus. And that goes back apparently precisely to the year 522 on the 14th of August at 5:15. Llancarvan, that's a native one as well. Hueni, Benedictine. Cardiff is a strange one. There's a Cardiff Blackfriars Dominican, the Cardiff Greyfriars Franciscan. There's the Cardiff Priory, which is Benedictine, the Cardiff Whitefriars Carmelite. And then you've got Bishopston Monastery, Benedictine. And one that we're going to look at the end on Barry Island. Not really associated with St. Barracks, but maybe associated with St. Barracks. So let's go on to what we've got. And to be honest with you, I've probably put a bit more into this than the hour that we needed, but I'm going to try and condense it a bit more. We've got something known as St. Pirro's Abbey on Barry Island. St. Pirro's, P-E-R-I-R-O''S, St. Pirro's. And that's on Barry Island. And that's going to be one that we'll mention a little bit of. So let's look at my images. Yes, Llandaff was in a ruinous state for large chunks of its later history. And Llandaff, as you know, we don't really need to show the map, but there we go, Llandaff. And that's where we're going to have a little bit of a snifter at now. So if we move on a little bit, there's Llandaff today. We all know about Llandaff being bombed and stuff, but and all the stuff that we see now, there's Norman and all it's later on, but they have done more recent excavations there, and I'm hoping one day we might be able to find some of that really early St. Dubricus, some of that really early pottery associated with Llandaff, but not yet, which is a bit of a shame. But opportunities do come up. And as you go down, you get the feel for the place. It looks very Norman, but there's a sense of something different about this locality. And you get it and feel it when you go there. I've been on, do you know, the one great thing, Bill, is to go on the ghost walks from outside the church, and then you've got a good backdrop, and then you've got a bit of a history. It's great, that. Llandaff, and associated with Llandaff is a great religious landscape. You know, like those great religious landscapes of old. And that there at the top is, well, in the middle, the Bishop's Palace. Strange building. This doesn't help us much way to understanding early Christianity for Cardiff and Llandaff. But for me, it was worth mentioning because everybody knows about Llandaff and they may have been there and they may understand it and so on. Cracking on. Llancarvan. I did mention, maybe in passing, that I was going to do Llancarvan. We had a wonderful walk around Llancarvan. We actually recorded it, and I went into a complete diatribe about the art inside, and I completely missed everything else about the history and archaeology of Llancarvan, I do believe. And, well, basically, I was really interested in the painting, so this will add something to, I think Gillian and Goff were actually on that walk, and Ellen, when we did that for Lantwick Major. And even though I concentrated on the sort of Norman, post-Norman paintings in there, you had a sense that you've got a church in the middle of a big area, in a middle of an absolutely massive graveyard. It's huge. And actually, it's such a big graveyard that there's so much space for people to be buried. You can have a person buried here, and 10 meters over, you can have someone buried over there. It's such a big area. And the reason why it's such a big area, that there was a massive monastery at LANGFORD at one point. And just digging at surface, you find remains of the monastery. Where you've got the nave inside there today now, and you've got the beautiful paintings, well worth a visit, really, really well worth a visit. They're looking to get more funding all the time to actually find more of the art in there, and this is the way they seem to go. And that sort of St. Caddoc lives and breathes that myth and that legend. And one thing I'd like to do is deconstruct a bit of history and put it back on again. So that's the church there. It sort of stands out, you know, it really does. And just a few things. It's always said, and I think this is a bit of an urban myth, it's always said that Llantywydd Major, LANGFORD, maybe something like Llamiangle, some of the other churches in the Vale of Glamorgan were placed in the places they're placed to stop them being attacked by people out at sea. But there's one problem with that story, that all of these native churches were founded well before anyone was worried about the Anglo-Saxons, well before the Vikings. The Vikings didn't turn up on the South Wales coast until about 800, and lots of these establishments have been going for 300 years. It's amazing, isn't it, Bill? Right? It is amazing that you think, well, 500, 600, 700, 800 is 300 years. That's a massive chunk of time before even the Vikings ever get here. And there's actually no real evidence of the Vikings ever setting light to any of these buildings anyway. It's quite likely they would have just gone along the coastline and done a bit of whatever they did and just buggered off. So I think that's a bit of an urban myth that they actually hid their churches in these valleys. And one of the things that's really distracting for me is the obsession with these names: St. Caddoc, St. Iltyd, St. Dyfan, St. Barrack, St. Gwadlais. You know, all this obsession with these names and putting them into some kind of chronology. You know, St. Caddoc, St. Iltyd, this place, that place. And I think that what we should do is actually think about the actual sense of religion, the sense of the place, the sense of why Christianity. There's another point to be made here. The reason why Christianity becomes so powerful in this area is it's because it's safe. It's safe to have churches. It's safe. In the Vale of Glamorgan, like we've got in Cornwall, there are loads of churches for a very, very small population. You've been with me to one or two churches in the Vale of Glamorgan, Bill, that are ruinous, like Clemenston. And there's one. I think you went with me to another church in the Vale that Kathy was with me that day, and we said, "Oh, this is a." Can you remember that one, Bill? We went in the middle of a field. There was some humps and bumps, and it was a really early church, and we were saying this is an early native church. Can you remember that one?
No, not when you say it's in the middle of a field. No, I'll be more specific than that. So we'll carry on.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, Bill. You've been in many fields with me. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's such a depth of religion. And in lots of ways, not to upset anybody, but I think the name calling is to try to make sense of these churches rather than actually, St. Caddoc being here in the first place. It's more, I'm not saying it's invented. I'm saying that it's more that we want to understand these by giving names to them. Now, that's a really weird, fat-looking church. It's really fat-looking because it was massive at one stage in such a big area. There's no graves in front of you here, and you're thinking, why is there no graves? There's just no graves, and it's just huge. It's all because of that attachment to the religious landscape. And now you're looking down at it and you're thinking, that looks impressive for such a very small population. And that's the proof in the mix more than anything, to understand this sense of early churches, early Christianity, and the early understanding. I think the other question is that we've looked at one or two places tonight, and I've said, well, you know, the Normans come in and they basically say, right, you know, we're not having any more of this monasticism here, right? We'll just turn it into a little parochial parish church. We'll take away the association with Caddock, for example. We'll take that away and we'll just make it a little church, and then we'll bring back the association with St. Caddock. We'll take away the monastery, basically, and then it can be a little parochial church. We see that sort of downsizing. And you did Llangynnoed as well today, Bill, and I wanted to chuck in there about Llangynnoed's massive religious links with Penrhys, because that was a pilgrimage route.
Yes, it was, yes.
And it was a pilgrimage route because Llangynnoed was not only important because people used to love seeing the rood screen, they also used to love going to see the wooden statue at Penrhys as well. That sort of huge pilgrimage route. And now there's nothing at Penrhys, and you've got no rood screen at Llangynnoed, and you've got a church that's lost at Llangynnoed. And Llancarvan is a little bit lost as well, but I love it. We all love it. It's a really nice place. And there it is. Look at the amount of land that's around it. It's quite a sizable area. And there was probably more to that land as well, probably a little bit up here as well. So I feel one of the aims tonight was to actually look at some of these lost monasteries, but within our understanding of the landscape. And maybe next time I'll do Lost Monasteries Part 2, and I'll chuck in Penrhys on that one as well. Taking a little note about that one. I'll do Penrhys because Richard's managed to do some research, and we've actually got some archaeological evidence of Mynachdy Rhys. We've actually got some of the ground plan, and there's nothing there now. There's no buildings there at all. It's completely lost. Llancarvan's got the big building there. This is the whole thing. St. Caddock. Now, when I put these together, I sometimes really wish I had a bit more time to actually look at my files and look at the records that I've actually got. And whenever I've taken people to this church, I lose them in thought. And the reason why I lose them in thought, I say, there's actually an arch there. There's actually, there's a big arch. You can, and if I sort of try and draw on there, let's see if I can do a bit of a drawing. There's a little bit of an arch that comes down there. And it looks very strange because you can actually see it from the outside. And I always say, well, you come to this church, and I say, well, this is a sign that at Llanmaes. This is a sign at Llanmaes that there was once a monastery there, a very big monastery. So you think about Llantwit Major just being down the road, and then you think about Llanmaes, and you also think, well, there's also another point to be made. To have all these religious establishments, the local ruling families must have been extremely wealthy to put the money into establishing these buildings in the first place. I'm not saying that the arch at Llanmaes is actually pre-Norman, but I'm also saying that this was a great Norman religious establishment. And there's something else I want to chuck in there before we do the end buildings that we're going to come on to. And what I'd like to chuck in there is that there's there's another difference between pre-Norman Christianity and Norman Christianity. There's pre-Norman Christianity. When you sort of look into it, the sense of the pilgrimage is a pilgrimage. It's like, let's have a pilgrimage to St. David's, St. David's, 7 pilgrimages to St. David's was worth 1 pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Yeah. And you think about that, right? You think, okay, and St. David's is a pre-Norman establishment as well in West Wales. And you think, well, it's not a money-making scam. Okay, some of the money is going to come in from the pilgrims, but lots of the money into these establishments would come in from the local ruling families. But after the Normans come in, what we do see is the bastardization of what some of the early Christianity was about, i.e., when we look at St. Barracks for a little bit today, there's a little bit of invention with the myth associated with St. Barrack. I know me and Pete, we love our St. Barracks, and we love the big fish, and we love the missal, and we like all that type of stuff. But there is early Christianity, but the meaning of early Christianity's changed so that the Normans can actually make money from it. And they're for those that don't know where Llanmoes is. There it is, just north of Llantuch Major. And what I'd like to do is make a little bit of a comparison between 3 islands of the Bristol Channel. And obviously, one's going to be Flatholm, the other's going to be Sully Island, otherwise known as Barry Island. I'll explain that in a minute. And then you've got Caldy Island. And what I'd like to do is just mention, hang on a minute, where's my, hang on. I do have an image of Caldy Island. Hang on, it was spectacular. It seems to have gone a minute. Just bear with me a minute. I just need to find where my image of Caldy Island's gone. For the sake of argument, I'm just going to find another one on the internet. It's disappeared. Caldy Island. It's good to have that as a bit of a backdrop. An image. Just a little technical difficulty there. There we go. Brilliant. Excellent. And let's change the screen sharing. And we'll do that now. New screen. And bingo. There's our little Caldy Island. And unfortunately, there we go. There's Caldy Island there. And I know lots of us have been to Caldy Island. And Caldy Island is a very strange locality across our land, because there's a religious order still on Caldy Island, whereas 99% of all religious orders across the whole of Cymru have gone. They were erased at the time of the dissolution of the monasteries. But I've deceived you about something. I may have given the impression that when the Normans came over, all the native religious orders were dissolved. All the native monasteries were dissolved or taken over by the Cistercians, the Benedictines, and something like that. But we do have 1 or 2 examples that remained within the native religious monastic orders all the way up until the dissolution. There are 1 or 2 out there, not many, but not all were absorbed or eradicated. So I just wanted to put that in there. And interesting enough, Caldy Island, there's a weird continuity. Caldy Island, it was originally, there was originally a native isolated order on Caldy Island. And then in the little cells, the little stone-built cells that we all hear about, whether that's true or not. But we've got an early religious establishment on Coldy Island. And then what we do, we go back to where I was. And so we've done Coldy. And then we've got Flatholm there, which we're not going to do a minute. Pete knows what I'm going to say. Now, I would like to introduce something that maybe none of you have heard of before. I think Pete may have. For many years, I've known about a weird priory, a weird set of remains that once existed and may still exist under the fairground, and that's known as St. Pirro's Abbey. The remains of St. Pirro's Abbey were excavated by the archaeologist John Story in 1895, and in a book I'm working with Richard Enos, we've actually found a lot of information about those excavations. But very few people know that under the fairground at Barry Island, there was once a priory. And is that an early pre-Norman priory, or is it a post-Norman priory? The answer is maybe both. Because the archaeology associated with that area of the fairground is intriguing, because we've got Roman evidence, we've got medieval evidence, and obviously later evidence. And it might be, if you look at the likes of Lantwick Major, where early Christianity once was, and it remained being early Christianity until the Normans, maybe the same model could be said with St. Pirro's. The other thing I'd like to show is the other site that is here. And that other site is known as St. Barracks Chapel. Pete knows all about St. Barracks Chapel, don't you, Peter? And there's a reconstruction of St. Barracks Chapel. Now, over the years, I've come to know St. Barracks Chapel. I actually did a wonderful plan of St. Barracks Chapel many, many years ago. This plan was so good. Years later, I dug it up out of a drawer. I did this plan when I was about 12. I dug it out of a drawer and we had it in the studio, and we took a professional plan, and my plan was a lot better in it than that. It had more detail on it. Anyway, long story short, I know this site really well. And was there a St. Barrack? We know there was a chapel there. Is this got anything to do with St. Pirro's Priory, St. Pirro's Abbey, or whatever you want to refer to it as? Strangely enough, in the early excavations of John Story in 1895, there was the remains of a very early chapel found. And when the Normans got to the island, they built a much larger chapel. And it's said that this was on a key pilgrimage route. And the reason why St. Barracks Chapel became very famous was because the Normans publicized it. They basically said, you know, we've got the chapel, go to the chapel. It's a really religious site. There's association with a fish and all these other wonderful things. So we get a little bit lost to whom St. Barrack actually was, and maybe it was a complete invention of the Normans. And in that, I would like to say, before we just quickly drop over to Flatholm, when you're reading about St. Caddoc, St. Iltyd, and all these other saints, you've got to ask the question where these sites are. Are they on key pilgrimage routes in the Norman period? And if so, are these the original names for the saints? If these sites are in isolated areas, not on main pilgrimage routes, there might be a very early association with a real Welsh saint. But I'd like you to all make up your own minds on that one. Because for all I know, St. Ilk did exist and St. Caddoc did exist. But I'm saying be very wary of the intent and reason behind some of these saints and the localities of these churches in the Norman period. But before, things were very, very different. And the title really was Lost Monasteries. And just show you one thing as well before we actually move on to the last item. That is our wonderful St. Barracks chapel and the remains of it today. And the archaeological remains that we do think are actually pre-Norman are by here. And funnily enough, this entire peninsula, Nell's Point or Wells Point, was actually up until the 1840s, 1850s called Sully Island, because Barry Island was two islands once. There was Little Island and there was Sully Island. And I explained that quickly. And there are literally thousands of graves in this area. And lots of these are pre-Norman graves, so indicating a rather important site that once existed before the Norman period. Just show you one thing quickly. Those that don't know this, that's Sully Church. Barry Island was two islands once. That belonged to the Sully parish up until the 1840s, 1850s. This Barry Island was all called Sully Island once. But at one stage, the island was in two bits. That was known as Little Island, Barry Island, which belonged to the manor of Barry Manor. So hence the confusion. And the last thing I'd like to mention, and Peter, I want to bring you on this one, but we'll do that. What I will do, Peter, I'll ask Bill questions and then we'll bring you in. One thing about this wonderful island in the Bristol Channel, Flatholm, and I could get a better image than that, I'm sure. So I'll just get another better image than that. Flatholm Island, there we go. This is probably one taken by Peter himself. Let's just, here we go. Let's get one image and then we'll move on. And then here we go. Brilliant. Excellent. And if I can show you that, new share, and here we go. Hopefully I can get this up. There it is. Now, Peter and I have known for years that on Flatholm there's a church, or actually there's a missing monastery. We do know, for example, that hang on, I'm going to click that. Stupid things on the screen. Hang on. We do know, for example, that famous figures would go out at Flatholm, and the reason why they must have been going out to Flatholm was there must have been some kind of refuge. There must have been some kind of monastery there. And hang on a minute, we've got something going on. But no remains of a church or a monastery have ever been found on Flatholm, and that is the mystery. What we do find written in the history is a clear link between St. Barrack and Caddoc and Flatholm. So there must have been some kind of religious building there. And it must have been very important in the Norman period, associated with an early pre-Norman establishment there as well. But other than that, we don't know anymore. But the reason why famous figures in history are going out there, that must be the draw of a great monastic site there at one stage in the past. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to ask Bill, have you got any questions?
Yeah, I have actually. KARL, Lost Monasteries. Ystrad Mynach literally translates as the land or estate of the monks. Now, do we know of any sort of lost monastery in that area?
Do you know, can you remember an edition of the newsletter a few months ago? It was about some remains at Nelson. Can you remember that? And I basically said that there's walls that have been preserved on this estate that are really old boundary walls that look like it's part of a monastic estate. You remember the newsletter that was in?
Nelson is about what, 6 or 7 miles from Ystradmanach?
Yeah, so that would be associated with it, Bill.
Yeah. So we feel there was something there then.
Yeah. If you look, I'm looking for the newsletters now. It was in one of our newsletters really recently.
Okay.
So if you look in the back catalogue of the newsletters, you'll actually find it.
Okay.
You know, I can't find it, but
yeah,
you'll see it.
Okay. The other thing is, Barrack doesn't seem to be associated solely with the Barry area, because if you go to Bedwas, the church on the hill there is also dedicated to St. Barrack. Why that would be, I don't know, because there's a fair distance between the two, isn't there?
Bill, now you can see the problem.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that it was believed that the name of the Barry family took its name from St. Barrack or Barry Island, but it could also be said that Barry Island is named after a warren, which, you know, we don't really know who St. Barrack was, and it might have been an invention by the Normans and to have an association with Barry Island.
Yeah.
But we do have other place names that are associated with Barrack. You are very right there, yeah. So,
but the monastery certainly was a way of creating money, wasn't it?
definitely for the Normans, not for the pre-Normans.
Yeah, the Normans, yeah.
Because
Okay,
pre-Norman communities were not, basically the Normans were basically spread all over the place. So because we were very insular, it would be very difficult to talk about vast pilgrimage routes. Lots of the patronage into our pre-Norman sites would actually be the local aristocracy rather than pilgrims. And when the pilgrims come along, a lot of money is made out of it. So,
yeah,
okay, what we're going to do, we're going to stop. If you want to say anything else, Bill, say it now.
No, thanks, Carl.
Okay, Pete, can you come in on this straight away? The thing to do with Flatome, Pete.
Well, St. Barrack was a local bishop, and the only the connection with Barry Island and St. Barrack was the fact that his body was washed up there when he was drowned coming back from Flatome. So he was a local bishop in the area. So the fact that there is a chapel dedicated to him up the valleys there is no stranger at all. I mean, it's quite normal that it may well have been. His association with Barry Island, like I said, is because his body was washed up there. St. Barrack was with LANGFORD, as we know.
Yeah.
And they were friends, and they were associates, if you like, and Gualchis as well, and Gildas. Gildas was over in Steepholm. They were all friends, or at least colleagues of some sort, and they would all meet up and talk to one another. And it was the fact that they were out on Flatome and on their way back to Barry, their boat capsized and they were both drowned.
What I'm going to say, Pete, right, is that is one version of the story.
Oh, yeah.
And which is really important. And you know, Pete, I am not going to dismiss that, and I'm not going to take that away from you, and I'm not going to undermine any of that. But what I will say, it's very convenient that we know nothing about anybody at this time other than a small number of saints. And you start to think, well, why is that? And how much of this is fact? How much of this is invention? And I'm going to leave that there. Let's all think about it. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to...
St. Barrack was the chronicler, wasn't he?
Yes. Associated, yes, exactly, associated with the writing there, yeah. So, Goff, is there anything you would like to say, Goff? Okay, nothing from Goff. What about you, Pammy?
Just a little observation on a couple of your photos. The Norman Tower, which was the square tower. On one picture, it was in the middle, and one, it was on the end. And I'd like to know the reason, really.
The reason is simply that it's usually that that tower was in the center. And if you look at the towers, you actually see architecture that runs off in other directions. And you need to be very careful when you look at these towers if there's any architecture running off in any other directions, and it's just been stopped because those parts of the buildings have been demolished. If you look, for example, at UNE, which is a Norman build, UNE Priory, you do see that parts of the building have actually collapsed or have been demolished, and the tower is more central than in these other localities. But with small parochial churches, the tower was usually added last. But that's not a monastery church. That's just a normal church. So there's differences.
Okay.
So anything you'd like to say, Jill? No? What about you, Goff?
Yeah, it was just about Flatholm. I understand that's a Viking name, isn't it?
Yes.
So what was it called? What's the Welsh name of it? Does that give a clue to what might have been on there?
Pete.
Innis Ecni.
Sorry?
Innis Ecni is its Welsh name.
Yeah.
Brandon realised there's a Saxon name for it.
Yeah.
And Stefan realised for Steepham. And they're known as the Graveyard of the Saints.
Yeah, so that indicates there was some sort of religious place on the islands, does it?
Yes, it does.
Oh yes, we know that St. Carrick spent quite a bit of time out there. He would go out there during Lenten and times like that.
Oh, very great. Didn't know that. That's great. Thanks very much, Carl. Very interesting.
So we got those links, and sorry at the end there. What was happening? I was getting the image up, and I was having Norton warnings on the computer saying at the same time, "You got a virus," and I was thinking, "Oh my God, I just want to talk." But anyway, yeah, no. So we got that out in the end. So we did that anyway. So that was great. Ellen, anything you'd like to say, quick?
No, thank you.
Okay, Ellen, and quickly, Jill, anything?
No, I don't think so, Carl. It was very good.
Thank you very much. So
one other observation, Carl.
Go on, Pete, before I do my spiel.
The photograph you showed of the monument. Remember the monument?
Yeah, the tall one.
Oh,
no,
that
monument,
really nice.
That was laid on the ground. And there, alongside that, there were rings of grass.
Right.
Now, I've seen those in other places. If you remember when we went to the Ring of Stones down in Cornwall, we went across to what was supposed to be an altar stone in the bushes, and on the bushes there were rings of grass, the same as those. Ah,
the monument, Llewellyn's monument. Yeah. Sorry, it took me a while. Llewellyn's monument at Abbey, come here. Yeah.
It's strange to see exactly the same thing that we had seen down in Cornwall at a similar sort of place.
And you know, we keep seeing the links between Cornwall and Cymru. That's the two C's, and Cumbria the three C's. So so I'd just like to mention we will be continuing for another 8 as of next week.
All right, I will.
Okay, Pete, that's good to have you along. So we'll be doing another 8 now. I'm going to confess, because it's been quite a traumatic past week. I will be working out what we'll be doing as of next Wednesday. So that's a confession. We haven't got any. There's a load of topics that I want to do, lots of stuff, and it's good that I've got you guys to do another 8. So I'll be looking forward to that. And I'll just mention, obviously, we'll be doing tomorrow's class, the forum next week without Pete, so it'll be Bill. And obviously what we do on a Friday with the YouTube. And the next newsletter is so full that I'm going to have to get that out soon.
Carl, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
One last one. Before these talks every week, for the last few weeks, you haven't sent an email link to open it. So I've gone back to the previous one and the one before that to open up. Is that the way it's going to continue now?
No, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to show on the screen, right? I'm going to show on the screen the link that I sent you all tonight. So and we can all see if there's anything wrong with it. So Here we go. This is the link that we sent everybody tonight. Can you see it? Rosamond, Del, Pam, Godfrey, Pat, Peter.
Yeah, I didn't get that far.
It said
I didn't get that.
it said it went out at
I didn't get
7:08.
that.
No, I didn't
I didn't get that. I used the afternoon
get it
one.
either.
I used the
Peter,
link on the
I'm wrong.
afternoon one. It takes you there just the same.
I don't know
Yeah.
why you're not getting it. I really don't.
Can you check
I'll
the email
check
address
on
in
that
the
one.
circulation?
It's saying it did go out at 7:09, and it also went out. It also went out at 11:50 this morning.
Well, I didn't.
Well, we're not there, are we? Like,
No,
You're not
I
there.
didn't get it.
no, and there's the proof.
And my name's not on there
Get
anyway.
one.
No,
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's on there.
Quite often
Peter
got the first-
Sampson.
Where?
no, as long as we get something consistent.
Oh, yeah, I see it, yeah.
Right. Okay. What's happening? It is going out, but obviously you're not getting it. So I don't know. I don't know why.
No.
No, my name's, well, you got 6 others. Who were the 6 others? It's certainly not me. Or
I
Pete.
I got the 7 o'clock one, but not the morning one.
Oh Christ! Nightmare. All right then. There's something
I
not quite
think
right.
the
Okay.
link is there on all of them. So as long as you've got one, you've got the link.
Actually, folks, right? Do what Peter just said, right? It's the same link every week with every single class. You know, we
Okay.
own that link, so just press
As
on
long
it.
as
If
you
you
know
don't
that.
get the link,
Just click
Alright.
on the link and you have to wait then for Dopey to let you in.
Okay.
right, on that note, if there's no more questions, have you all
Good
enjoyed
night.
tonight?
Yes.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Carl.
it was good.
Yeah, thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Goff, Jill, Pam,
Thank you.
Ellen, Peter, and Bill.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye, Golf.
See you tomorrow. Take care. Diolch.
Yes,
Bye,
Goff.
bye, bye.
Take
Bye.
care.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
That was good. That was good.
There we go.
That last little bit with the island, Pete, it was just like, it was so frustrating because I just thought I want to talk and it's just coming all this stuff and like, oh God.
Yeah, I know. You didn't get the picture up. Yeah, fair enough. I thought you got it up in the end.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, anything you want to say, Pete, before you go?
No, but I will join you again, I suppose. So how much do I owe you now?
£106 and 48 quid. No, £30. £30.
£30 for this one, and then the book, £15.
15
That's
shekels.
45 bloody quid. A poor old pensioner.
No, Pete. No,
Poor
right.
old pensioner.
No, Pete, it's not, right? That £15 belongs to Archaeology Cymru Media. These classes are Archaeology Cymru online, right? And then the ones on a Thursday are Archaeology Cymru. So the thing is, it's 3 different lots of money, and you know, it's not my problem.
Yeah, just taking it all off a poor old pensioner.
There's one thing, Pete, right? You haven't been driving anywhere, so that just think of that fuel you've been saving.
Yeah, I have. I've been going picking up your bloody Watson and picking Sandra up and bringing her down and taking her back home again.
I bet.
Providing
Does
taxi
she?
service.
Hey, does she ever give you any shekels?
No. She's going to next week, but that's for you again.
It's all about me, isn't it?
Yes.
So,
There you go.
No, so that's good. So we'll oh, you know, I got to tell you this now, right? I tell you a few days ago, I had to I tell you a few days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, I had to phone the police because the what happened, right? We used to have problems with that neighbour, and that's it. And then we thought, right, that's all sorted. And then we've been having problems with the other neighbour, right? So I just thought, right, don't say anything, keep your mouth shut, just don't say a word, right? Anyway, so the guy got a ladder up against our window. He's peering in at me, right? Yeah? And he's painting the fucking wall.